What does it truly mean to lead with authenticity? How do the stories we tell ourselves shape the way we lead and live? And why is vulnerability one of the most powerful tools a leader can have? I'm thrilled today to bring you an insightful and heartfelt conversation with Evan Spargo. Evan is a high-performance coach, speaker, and advocate for men's mental health. Through his work, he empowers individuals to rewrite their narratives, embrace vulnerability, and lead with courage and intention. Evan shares profound lessons about self-awareness, identity, and what it means to show up authentically in all aspects of life. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm greatly honored today to be joined by a good friend, Evan Spargo, someone that inspired me to become a coach. So we're in for a bit of a treat here. It'll be a bit of a trip down memory lane for me, but you're going to see just how amazing and inspirational Evan is. Evan is a master certified coach with the International Coaching Federation, and he's the founder of a community called Ascension. And his specialty is focusing on men's coaching. And this episode is going to air in November, which for people in Australia, that's a very special month for men's health and men's awareness. So this is going to be a wonderful conversation to bring in some of the struggles that men do have and where Evan helps them to unblock them away from unconscious bias or unconscious blockers that are holding them back, and how they can live their most fullest and complete life. So without any further ado, Evan, I would love it if you would say hello to the audience and give everyone a little flavor of your background and what inspired you to do the work that you do today, particularly specializing in men's coaching.
Yeah. Hey, Mick, and hey, everyone. Hey, listeners. Thanks for having me here. It's exciting to be here. And yep, Mick and I do go a long way, so it's going to be a great conversation to catch up. So a little bit about me. I'll take you back to childhood because that's where I like to start a story. And it starts with a young, shy, introverted, very quiet, reserved, half Filipino, half Australian boy in Melbourne, going through school, going through life, and just really scared of everyone around him, of school, of life, and very sheltered, very innocent. And it was through schooling that I found myself just deepening in my personality of being that shy little kid and being more afraid. And it wasn't until I started playing sport that when I started to want to become a leader, I wanted to really come out of my shell and really build that confidence. Because for so long, for the first 15 or so years, I was just always in the background. I wanted to blend in the background. I didn't want to be seen, didn't want to be heard. And school really brought that out of me, how afraid I was. And so it was sport that really made a huge difference in my life. And I started playing sport. I started getting into fitness, into training, and I started to build confidence. I started to make the senior teams. I became vice captains. I became leaders. And because of this beautiful transformation I went through from this really shy, awkward kid who couldn't stand up in class and read to a group of other children. I was the only Filipino kid in school and no one knew where the Philippines was. So I felt quite embarrassed, to the boy who was going on the football field. So I'm talking about Australian rules football here, and kicking goals, starting to really feel good about himself, getting in the gym, getting bigger, getting stronger, getting fitter. And that's when I decided to become a personal trainer, to study exercise sports science at university. So I became a personal trainer and traveled the world. So I went to the US after university and had a working year holiday, and went to Europe, and then came back to Melbourne, became a personal trainer again. And then that's when I moved to the Philippines. And I moved to the Philippines, so obviously I'm half Filipino, and spent 7 years there from 23 to 30. And it was in those mid-20s where I took my sporting to the next level. So I went and played rugby union for the Philippines. So I was a national rugby player. And it was, one of the best moments of my life, because it was a childhood dream to play elite sport. But at the same time, it was about my mid-20s when on the surface, everything looked great. I was super athletic, super fit. I was playing sport at the high level. Everyone saw me as like this guy who had it all together, the popular guy, charismatic guy. And then deep down, I was deeply, deeply unhappy, unsatisfied, unfulfilled. I had a drinking problem. I would sit in shame and hide myself in my room for a couple of days on end, just in a really bad space mentally. And yeah, I got to a stage, I think when I was about 26, 27, and I just remember I just didn't want to go to bed. And that's when, luckily enough, someone introduced me to a coach, a life coach. And I started working with this coach, and it was such a profound experience because I fell in love with self-development work. I was like, wow, I can actually get better. And I enjoyed the process of getting better and getting the best out of myself. Obviously, as an athlete, that's what you want to do physically, but I didn't know you could do that mentally and emotionally. So I started that work, and I went through this deep 3-day seminar where we really saw the dark side of ourselves. And it was in that process where I realized I had a lot of resentment and anger towards my dad. And so my dad and I had a really tumultuous relationship, especially from my end, really hard on myself, no emotional connection, and just really hard. And I remember just growing up really resentful and had a lot of anger towards him, and didn't realize I've been carrying that my whole life, and it was contributing to a lot of my unhappiness and a lot of my wounding. And so when I went through that process with that coach and in that seminar, I released a lot of that. And I felt lighter and lighter and lighter and freer and freer and freer. And I was like, wow. And I was personal training at the time. I walked away from that seminar, and the next few days I met a client, and I told him the story about how I went through the process of facing my dark side, facing my dad, and letting all that go. And he actually said to me, Evan, if you go and tell your dad this, I will fly you back to Australia within the next month. And I was like, wow. And at the time I didn't have a lot of money. So I was like, oh my God, I want to do that. So I took him up on the offer, and I flew back to Melbourne unannounced. So no one knew I was going to come back except my brother. And I sat there in the lounge room waiting for him to come home, and he came home. He's like, oh, you're here. I'm like, yep. He sat down with no distractions, and I sat down with no distractions, and I could feel my heart beating a million miles an hour. I felt like it was about to come out of my mouth. And that's when I said to him, Dad, I want to just tell you something that I've been through. And then I told him everything that I went through in that seminar, how I thought about him in a real positive way, that I forgave him, that I accepted him, that I loved him. And he didn't say those things back, which I didn't expect, but he said enough to say like there was an acknowledgement there. And that's when I probably had the best moment of my life in that moment of doing that. I just felt this complete elation, this freedom, and this pure joy and happiness come over me. And that's when I said to myself, I'm going to be a coach, and I'm going to help everyone. I'm going to help as many people as I can to feel what I just felt. And so since that day, which was back in April 2017, I went and signed up at a course with Coach Masters Academy in August 2017. And since then, that's when I've just dedicated my life to coaching. And so I went all in, started with obviously learning coaching. Then I went on the faculty team and became a student support. Then I went to a coach supervisor, and then I became a trainer, then a director of training for Australia. And then became a PCC coach, which is a professional certified coach with the ICF, and then a master certified coach. So I got the mastery in the end, which is quite a big accomplishment for someone my age, but that's what I really wanted to know and got it. And then it wasn't until, fast forward until last year, when I was in a Vipassana, which is a 10-day silent meditation retreat. I was in Bali at the time, and I was in there. And obviously when you're in that retreat, you've got nowhere to hide. So you're there with your thoughts. And I went in with the intention of, what is my purpose in this world? Because I loved being a coach, but there was something missing. There was just something where I couldn't nail. I was all over the shop with my coaching business. I didn't know where to go, what direction, who to work with. And then I was sitting there 5 days in, and I just closed my eyes when I was in meditation. Obviously, you got to do that. And I asked, what is my purpose? And it came through, and it was like, you're a men's coach. I'm a men's coach. I'm meant to help men in this world to heal themselves, to get what they want, to become heart-led leaders. And then that's when, since then, I started to be a men's coach, pivoted my business, purely working for men, created my signature program called The Ascension, and now I have a men's community, and I now serve men all around the world. So hopefully that was not too long of a story, but just enough to get the conversation going.
Oh, I think it was wonderful, Evan. And I think we needed to hear all of that to set the scene. And thank you so much for sharing so openly and vulnerably with us your full story there. And also, congratulations on your success. I've seen you in action. You're certainly one of the best coaches I've ever seen in some of those practices that we used to do at Coach Masters. And I'd see the way that you do that, but also the way that you develop other coaches, which I know is an important part of your community as well. There's multiple chapters that I would love to unpack in there. I want to go all the way back to that scared little boy and the discovery of sport and the discovery of leadership. What I'm curious to know is, was that an intentional action that you wanted to break away from that persona and therefore pursued sport? Or was it that you started to play sport and realized, oh, I kind of love this? Or was it a bit of both?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. It's a bit of both. I always loved sport and I always loved football. And I played football averagely and just went around just being okay at it without being outstanding. And I was at the age of 15 where it got to a stage where I just said to myself, I want to be better. I made the decision, I want to be better at sport. I remember I was in year 10, I said, I want to win an award. I want to prove to myself that I can be good. And so I had that goal at the start of the year that I wanted to win that award. And so by the end of the year, I won it. And I said to myself, wow, this is possible. I can actually become who I want to be. I can actually get what I want. And so, and another funny story was in the years leading up to that, I reckon since I was age of 8 or 9, every single birthday, I would, we have a birthday party, there's a cake and you blow out the candles, you make a wish. My wish every single year from the age, I reckon, of 8, probably 8 until 15, was that I want to be more confident. I want to be more outgoing. I want to be able to make friends and step up. That was my wish. Like, I didn't care about all the material goods. I wanted to become better and more confident. And so when I proved to myself that I could win that award, that's when I was like, wow, I'm actually capable of doing something here. And that's when I said to myself, the next step is I want to be a leader. I want to be able to lead others. I want to gain the respect of others. I want to be able to stand up and lead other men. And that's when I put myself into the higher competitions. That's when I went in the school team. I made the first 18 team and then felt really good about that as a young year 11. And then in year 12, I was the vice captain. And then I just kept continually wanting to step up as a leader. I used my voice because I couldn't use my voice in my personal life or at school. I used it out in the sporting field to practice. So encouraging other team members, saying, really bringing them along and instructing and encouraging. That's all I did. And that practice helped me practice my voice to speak in front of other kids and teammates. And then eventually that flowed on into my personal life and at school, into my academics. So really I attribute a lot to sport. And I made that decision through playing sport as I wanted to develop my confidence and wanted to be a leader. And sport was the vehicle of doing that, which then translated into my personal life and ultimately into my career.
Yeah, that was the word I was going to use. I was going to use sport was your platform. It was the vehicle to find your voice, but then it's impacted the rest of your life once you worked out how to do it. What made finding that confidence and leadership important to you?
Yeah, I was sick and tired of being scared. I was sick and tired of feeling unfulfilled, being in the background and not getting what I want and not enjoying myself. It was a decision in time where I was like, that's enough. Enough is enough. I am capable of being better. I'm capable of bigger things. Because for so long before that, I was just like, I'm no one. I'm a nobody. I'm not worth it. I had all these programs going through my mind of, oh, there's something wrong with me. Why are all the other kids so cool? Why are all the other kids so good at sport? Why are they so smart? Why am I not like that? And then that's when it hit me again. That 15 was a very pivotal age for me. It's when I decided enough is enough. I'm better. I'm capable of being better than who I am now. And that really started the interest in self-development.
Mm. So, really interesting question here is that this can happen to people at any stage in their life. So, for you, it was as a young man and as a boy growing up. But there's going to be people listening to this show, Evan, that are listening to this going, yeah, there's something in them that holds them back, whether it's confidence or imposter syndrome or limiting beliefs that they want to take action, but they're not sure how to break through. And your vehicle and platform was sport. But what advice could you give to someone? They might be in their 40s or 50s and there's something holding them back. Where do they start?
Yeah, it's a great question. There's a lot of ways we can look at this, but I'm going to go straight to the core of it, is that what blocks us from confidence? I believe there's two things that blocks us from it. Number one is competency. So you're either competent or you're not. If you lack competency in what you're in yourself and whatever that you're doing, you're not going to be confident. So that's on a logical level, is that the more confidence you have in yourself, in your skill set, in whatever that you're trying to achieve in this world, you're going to feel confident as a result of that. So for example, as an athlete, if you're competent in your physical prowess and in your skill set, it's going to translate into confidence. The other side of confidence, and the one that people don't really talk about, is what are you hiding? We aren't confident if we have to hide something about ourselves. So what I notice is a lot of people who I work with is they want confidence, but they're hiding something about themselves. To be confident, we must be authentic. Okay? We want to have authentic confidence. Authentic confidence is when you can truly be yourself. And when you are yourself, that's when we are our most confident. When we are ourselves and we have competency, that is a strong force of confidence. So what I would be asking them is, what are you hiding? And as you mentioned a really good term before, imposter syndrome. Are you hiding the fact that you believe that you are an imposter? Are you scared that will be found out? Because if you are, well then, yeah, you're not going to be confident. You're going to be hiding because you're hiding a part of yourself. So how do you move through that? You acknowledge that, hey, I do feel like an imposter. So what can I do to not feel like an imposter is to build competency. So I'll give you an example. So when I first started coaching, felt like an imposter. And I didn't put myself out market myself as a coach for quite a long time because I felt like an imposter as a coach. So what did I do? I went and studied to become a master at it so that I didn't have to feel like an imposter anymore. And as I built competency, I started to develop natural confidence in it. So using those two ways of looking at confidence is, what are you hiding? And whatever you're hiding, how can you build competency in that?
Mm. So two major chapters that I'm hearing there, Evan, the confidence cycle, that as I try something and I build my competence, I can become more confident. I'm also taking away from this, Evan, that as I become more confident, I'll try even more. So it's like a virtuous cycle that's going to build on each other. I get a bit of competence, I build a bit of confidence. That leads me to, I'm going to try again. And the more I try, well, guess what? I got a bit more competent and I can see it building on each other. But then I'm also hearing that if we don't address that thing that's holding us back, whether it is that imposter syndrome or the thought that you're going to get found out or something like that, it was an interesting way you described it, that we're also not going to get there. What I'm curious to know is, what role does fear of judgment play in that? Like, so is it introspective where it's a internal validation, or is it that we're worried about what others will think of us if we try and we fail?
Yeah, it's a common block for a lot of people when it comes to confidence is people fear what others judge about them. They feel like they're being watched. They feel like they're being constantly observed and criticized and analyzed. And yeah, it's a burden that a lot of people carry. And often it comes from quite a fair bit of judgment as a child, whether it's from parents, caregivers, people around them, and they carry that way of, if that's what happened when I was a child, well, then isn't that going to happen as an adult? So we do carry that from childhood if we grow up in an environment of heavy judgment. Another thing, I'm going to offer another perspective of fear of judgment. And this is where I go into my line of work, and which is shadow work. And shadow work's all about looking at the unconscious side of dynamics and the psyche of ourselves. And so the shadow is everything that we've suppressed and repressed about ourselves, the things that we don't want to look at that actually drive us. Fear of judgment was also a self-sabotage mechanism. What I mean by that is that if we hold this fear of judgment, it actually stops us from putting ourselves out there, which means that we do not become successful. Right? So if we are constantly blocking ourselves through this fear of judgment, then we do not become successful. And a lot of people fear success is because if we become successful, we become, and you'll know this as being a leader, an executive leader, is that when you're at the top, you get criticized more, there's more responsibility, there's more thrown at you, there's less time to rest and relax and be lazy. People are unconsciously scared of that. And so fear of judgment happens as our shadow is trying to block us from getting what we think we want, but our shadows don't want that. Our unconscious side does not want success because it is so scared of the repercussions of becoming successful. People fear rejection so much. And there's the thing is, if we become successful, we're going to be rejected. That is part and parcel of it most of the time. And that's what people unconsciously fear. So when people fear judgment and they start to believe it, it's because, well, then what is the fear of actually becoming successful?
I've never heard anyone put it like that, Evan, but I think you're spot on. So there is an element of fear of failure. There's an element of fear of judgment, but the fear of success, once you're on that spotlight, then you feel like you got 1,000 eyes looking at you and you can't make a mistake. And you start not being authentic because you start playing the role of what you think other people expect of you. Like you start becoming an amalgam of societal expectations of what it means to be the person that you are, instead of just being the person that you are. So we've gone away from that authenticity. How does that sit with you?
Yeah, it does. Absolutely. And what I want to add on to that comment is that when we want to be confident, and confidence is usually, let's put ourselves out there in this case, put ourselves out there to speak in front of a big room of people. If we want to do that, then there's that fear of, well, how am I going to be judged? Right? Because when we see someone else up there, we judge them. So we are actually scared of our own judgments. So I'm going to repeat that again. When we see people where we want to be, so we see confident people, we see people in the spotlight, we see celebrities, we see people at the top management levels, we judge them. Okay? We do it unconsciously, we judge them. And so we know how harsh our judgments can be. So if we become these people in the spotlight, if we become more confident, if we become these top leaders, we think that we're going to receive the same judgment that we give them. And that judgment is brutal. And then a lot of us will block becoming that confident and stepping up into that leadership because we don't want to suffer the criticism and judgment that we actually give ourselves to those people.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Evan. I think you've captured it beautifully, and that's where that unconscious barrier starts kicking in. You said something interesting before, then the self-sabotage. What does the self-sabotage look like at that point?
Yeah. So self-sabotage there's many different mechanisms of doing that. So self-sabotage is basically a protective mechanism. It stops us from changing the concept of self that we've created. So we create this concept of self, this mask, this image that we want to present into the world. And if anything comes in to disrupt that, we will use self-sabotage will come in to make us stop that, to stop changing that. So even if it means success, even if it means we want to be successful, if it does not align with our self-image, then self-sabotage will come in. Okay. So for me, I'll give you an example. My perception of self for quite a while time was like this image of perfection, this quiet guy, this polite kind of leader. Then anything that would disrupt that. So if I became in the spotlight more, I was scared that my insecurities would be found out. Okay. The fact that I like to swear sometimes, the fact that I do make mistakes, the fact that I can dress messy, all these little things. I was scared that if I'm in the spotlight, all this will be revealed, which will disrupt my image of perfection that I tried to create. Now, if that happens, my self-sabotage will come in to bring me back to who I think I am. So I self-sabotage so much of my success in the past is because it didn't want to disrupt the image that I was creating. So self-sabotage with things like procrastination, perfectionism, judgment, all the different fears that we have, our emotions in our body. So anger will come in, sadness will come in, shame, guilt, all these emotions will rise to the surface, create emotional reactivity, and then we'll stop doing what we're doing because it doesn't want to disrupt the image that we've created. So there's all these different ways that we sabotage ourselves to conserve, to preserve, to protect the image that we've created, even if it means being more successful. Because if we're successful, all the things that we're trying to hide about ourselves can be revealed. And when you become successful, you don't know how you're going to act. You don't know if you're going to be able to hold that image that you've tried so hard to create. So this is the whole work of the shadow work, is being able to look at the image we create and also who we really are and trying to bring them together so that we don't have anything to hide anymore, that we are authentic. Because when we're authentic, we're confident. And when we're authentic and confident, we become more magnetic, and that brings a lot more success and joy into our lives.
Yeah, it's kind of self-defeating. It really is. Like the self-sabotage is also self-defeating from actually finding the joy that we're actually searching for. What I'm taking away there, Evan, is it feels like it can come up in any part of our life. We've spoken a lot about leadership and whether you take that next step into that leadership role, and the higher you go, the more the spotlight is on you. But I think it applies to your love life, to your family, to your relationships, to any pursuit that you want in life. Are you taking those courageous actions, or are you self-sabotaging because you haven't addressed the shadow?
Yeah, exactly right. So we've just spoken about leadership and career, but what about the times when you're with your partner? So for example, a lot of men in particular don't feel like they are worthy of love. And this is really sad. And this is what inspires a lot of my work, because that's how I felt. I felt like that growing up. I felt like I was unworthy and undeserving of love because, well, that's the interpretation that I got from the lack of emotional connection from my dad. So his lack of emotional connection, which I now see as that's just him. I know he loves me, but that's his way of doing things. But as a child, you don't have that awareness, do you? You don't have that ability to discern what is actually going on. And so I saw this emotional distance and emotional neglect as, well, I'm not lovable. And what happens is if you carry this program, this belief that I'm not lovable, you're going to enter a relationship and you're going to sabotage that relationship. You're going to sabotage by creating drama, creating fights, by withdrawing, avoiding intimacy, avoiding emotional connection. You're going to put your partner down all unconsciously to fulfill the belief that you have that you are unlovable. And what's going to happen is that you sabotage the relationship. There could be infidelities. There could be all these little different things where the other person has no other choice but to walk away from you. Hence, reaffirming that you are unlovable. So this is how it plays out.
It's just become deep confirmation bias at that point, that you thought you were unlovable and the person left you, so you must have been unlovable, but you didn't allow them to love you. You didn't let them in because you were worried that they weren't going to like what was underneath the hood.
Spot on.
All right. Now, you've touched on this a little bit. I wanted to go into a bit of a second chapter here around your dad, if that's okay. So you spoke about a little bit of conditioning, that things come from your childhood that then condition the way that you see the world now. And what I'm hearing is someone in your life brought you to almost face those demons. And in the coaching world, something you taught me was about a resolving mindset to resolve things from your past versus a heightening mindset to look forward to the future. Am I taking from your experience, and just tell me if I'm 100% wrong, that if we don't address those demons from our past, that the heightening mindset and the coaching and the high performance won't be achieved if we don't address those things? Is it like, does it have to go before the heightening mindset?
Yeah, I'm going to explain it in away from coaching terms so that listeners can really understand this. I love how you brought in high performance. So honestly, and I know this from a fact because a lot of high performers don't resolve the past and are extremely successful because they are inspired either by revenge, by proving other people wrong, in particular their parents, by trying to get validation. And so they use their pain, and this was me for a long time. I used my pain to create high success. And you see a lot of the high achievers have some parental issues, and they openly admit that, is because they use that as their motivation and their inspiration to get to where they are. Now, the problem with that is that it can only work for so long. This dark motivation you'll get to a stage in life where a couple of things can happen. Either you become so self-berating that you fall into a depression because you're so used to criticizing yourself, you're so used to berating yourself and punishing yourself that it just gets too much for the psyche, and it gets too much that all that suppressed anger towards oneself, the shame comes up, and you have to face it. And when someone faces it after years and years and years of using it as their fuel, it can be very detrimental to their mental health, and they fall into deep depression. This can lead to terrible things, and we see a lot of suicide that comes up from just a lot of just that self-berating and constant shaming of oneself. So that could be that could be one scenario. Another one could be they're so used to using the pain and they're so wounded that they'll get into a relationship, and again they'll sabotage their relationship. They'll sabotage their family. They'll be disconnected from their children. They'll start treating their children like they treat themselves, which is really harsh. And if you haven't healed your wounding from your childhood, you will repeat what you experienced as a child to your children as well. So it can be one of the greatest tools, your pain, to become successful and high performance. But at some stage, everything that you've suppressed is going to come and you're going to have to face it. And so that's where I come in. That's where I help these high performers when they face these parts of themselves that are really starting to hurt them and bring pain into their life and suffering. So, for example, this may show up as anxiety, depression, a really active inner critic, sabotaging their own relationships and their happiness around them. They could be attracting the wrong people in their life. They could be on a downward spiral of drugs and alcohol and not knowing why. So these are all surface level symptoms of what is usually childhood trauma. And a lot of the childhood trauma, a lot of the upbringing is not so much what happened to them, but the meaning that they gave to those events. And so part of this work as an evolving human and adult is to be able to heal those wounds and to make peace with that so that they no longer control our life. Because if we don't address them, they're going to continue to create the results in our life, whether we like it or not. So that's where some of the deep work comes from.
First thing I want to say in response to that, Evan, if anyone's listening to the show and you're having some of those very dark thoughts that Evan is talking about, that there are services, regardless of where you're listening to this. If you're in Australia, there's services like Lifeline. If you're in other countries, there's suicide helplines in every country that I'm aware of. So there's always a way out. Regardless of how deep you think you're in, there's always a way out, and there's always people that can help you. Please do make a phone call and let people help you. The part that I'm taking away there, Evan, I heard a few things, and I heard it in your own story, by the way, when you were talking about your discovery of this. But if we don't address those demons and dark drivers from our past, like I say, they might be fueling you right now, but if we don't address them, if we keep on masking them through high performance, masking them through alcohol, all they're going to do is compound over time, and you may pass it on to the next generation, or it may just result in a huge explosion one day because you haven't actually addressed it. And coming back to your story before, on the surface, most people would have looked at you and gone, there's Evan, isn't he amazing? He's got his entire life sorted out. So the societal definition of success, you would have had a big tick. But in reality, you weren't really successful because it didn't feel right inside. What did you learn about the definition of success in those days?
Yeah, what I learned is success usually comes from what we're conditioned to believe. So what we believe from our parents, what we believe from school and society. And a lot of the success that I was striving for was all achievement based. So success, what I saw was look good, be fit, be smart, be well educated, achieve really high, impressive feats, whether it's in sport, become the most successful there. So I wanted to be an elite athlete and an international athlete. So I became one. I wanted to be a master in my field. So I became one as a coach. And you get those things and you're like, shouldn't this be amazing? Shouldn't this be everything that I dreamed of? Why am I still suffering? And that's when I realized, well, maybe I needed to change my definition of success. Maybe I needed to relook at, well, why am I still suffering even though I've got everything that I've ever wanted? Not everything, but most things. And that's when I went in this deep dive journey. This is when I was just like, okay, there's got to be something else. And working through my father wound was a really enormous journey and transformational journey because a lot of the pain came from that wound. And it was through that journey of where the pain was where I found my fulfillment, my purpose. And I think that's what a lot of men, everyone is, but in particular men are seeking deeper meaning and purpose in their lives. And I believe a lot of that comes from their pain, being willing to face their greatest pains and wounds, because it's in that journey we find out who we really are and what we're really capable of and what really means the most to us. And so over time, I was very much the superficial, like how can I look the best? How can I be the most popular? How can I be famous? How can I be the most successful in terms of achievements? And I was on that way and I was just like, why do I feel so depressed? And that was the catalyst for me to go, okay, I'm going to go through my wounding. And I went deep into my wounding, which on the other side of that, and you're always working on it, but on the other side of that, I found my deepest purpose in this world. And then that's to help men heal, to go through that same journey, because I see how rewarding it is. And that's the other side of success we don't really advertise and we don't look at and we're not really learnt about. So taught about.
I'm so glad that you did this, Evan, and you've come out the other end as this amazing person that's in front of me today and helping so many people. On that purpose, let's unpack that a little bit more. With the skill set that you have, the competence that you have, you could help people from all walks of life. You could even go down the sports high performance path. You would be incredibly successful. I'll use that word here for a second. But you specifically chose men's coaching. What was it about men's coaching that gets you out of bed every day wanting to do this?
Yeah. What inspires me, and this is not a positive, but firstly seeing how unhappy my dad was growing up and noticing as I grew up, just all the unhappiness around me and other men. And then people, start dying, men start killing themselves. And it just crushed me. And it's hurt. It's heartbreaking hearing friends of friends who've lost someone at a young age. And that's when I was just like, something needs to be done here. Something has to be done. And I've been through my own battles, and I've had suicide ideation myself. I've had it a few times, which is a really nasty place to be in. But what it gave me was that, and lucky enough, I have the tools to be able to move through that and the support. And that gave me perspective of, wow, this is what we get to in our minds before we want to commit something like that. And I'm like, okay, I know what it's like now. I know what these men are going through. And you don't have to do that. You don't have to take that big plunge. You don't have to end everything. And it's all these things that led me to, there's men need help in this world and there's not enough of it. And what I appreciate about the coaching industry is that they give you the skill sets to help, but it's female dominated. So if you remember back when we were doing CMA, I'd say there was probably 70, 80% women and the rest men. And that's just, and I'm like, this has got to change. And that's when I thought, well, I want to be one of the pioneers. I know there's a lot of other men's coaches out there, but at least I want to start really bringing this movement for men into helping them heal their stuff, because there's not enough of it. And you just see how hard it is for men to open up and to heal themselves and to open up about what they're dealing with. And unfortunately, we see a lot of terrible things happen in the world as a result of that, and a lot of men losing their lives. And I just thought to myself, well, what can I do? What can I do to start to change this? And it's one of the reasons why I started my men's communities, because one of the parts of the men's community that I love and everyone else loves is called a men's circle. So a men's circle is when a group of men come together and everyone holds space for one man to share all of who they are, whatever's on their chest, and be completely themselves with full confidence, confidentiality, no judgment, no advice giving, just being like, you're a man who gets to be seen in all of who you are, no matter how bad the things that you've done, you get to be seen and held by another man. And it was one of the most healing experiences I've ever been through. And that's what I've created. And so that's my way of starting this movement to help men.
I think it's wonderful, Evan. And once again, to the audience, if anyone is going through these dark days, there's always a way out. Listen to what Evan is saying. There's groups there that can help you. I'm going to share an interesting dichotomy for you, Evan. And I find this quite difficult to talk about at times, in fact, that on the surface, we see a lot in the world where it's a male-dominated world. And a lot of people say it's a man's world, and it's so much easier for men. Right, so we get that kind of soundtrack played to us. And yet, let me share something with you that every day, you and I, both in Australia at the moment, 9 Australians lose their life to suicide every day. 9. 7 of those are men. And something that you said a moment ago is generally in society, there's a stigma talking about mental health and if you're struggling. But for men, it feels triply so. That there's a stigma that if you open up and say, you know what, I'm doing so well today, that people are going to judge you, that you can't speak up. How do we get men, this is getting right into your work here now, Evan, how do we get men to realize that they're in a safe space and it is okay to say, I'm not okay, and to seek help?
Really, really powerful question and relevant. The simple answer is men need men. Men need other men in order to heal, and in order to challenge and champion us. Before I go into that, you sparked something really important about why men struggle so much. And yes, there's absolutely a stigma. There's a perception that we want to create of masculinity, what a strong masculine male is, and anything other than that is going to be judged, it's going to be rejected, it's going to be outed by society. And that's something that is starting to hopefully shift, and that's the work that we're doing here. But you got to understand the dynamics of men as well. Women are so good at being able to feel an emotion, be present in the moment, and express that and release that. So they don't carry around a lot. It's easier for them to move their emotions through them. Men, on the other hand, we are designed to numb emotions so that we can work in high pressure situations without being affected by those emotions. So you see a lot of the most dangerous jobs in the world are done by men, because men obviously have the strength and the testosterone, but also the ability to numb emotions so that we do not get affected by them. They don't affect our decision making, and so that we can complete those hard tasks without being affected. So, but the problem with that is, because we're designed that way, we don't easily move it through us. So we suppress it, we repress it, it sticks with us, and then eventually it wants to come out in very unhealthy ways, or we use different vices to continue to numb them down. Okay. So that's what I wanted to preface first before we talk about what's next. Coming back to the point that men need men. When we really think about it in, let's say, a relationship, the man, the masculine, is the leader, and the feminine, the woman, is the partner and is being supported by the man. It's very challenging, and I know this for a fact after doing a lot of this work, is that when a woman sees her man constantly emotional, constantly vulnerable, then she, as much as we want men to be vulnerable, she will lose faith in his leadership. If he's continuously struggling and pouring his emotional baggage onto her and using her as her therapist, she's going to start to lose faith in his leadership. She's going to lose attraction for him. And so this is one of the reasons why men cannot open up in their relationship, because it's challenging. There's dynamics there. Okay. So that's why a lot of men don't do that. And they stuff everything inside because they want to make sure that, and this is again, unconscious program. This is how men are unconsciously doing this. They are making sure that they don't show any weakness to their partners so that they don't lose faith in them. How do we move through this? And that's why it comes back to men need men. We needed a father figure. And this is where a lot of the struggle comes from, is because there are so many tainted relationships with boys and their fathers. And so they never got to learn how to emotionally regulate. They never learned how to be with another man in communion, in connection, in to be able to see each other and move through their emotions. So boys don't learn how to move through their emotions because either estranged fathers or fathers emotionally neglected them and just didn't teach them. And so when you can heal in front of another man, when you can open up in front of another man, and there is no judgment, and they stay with you and there's full acceptance, it is healing, because it means that we're still part of the tribe. We fear being vulnerable. We fear opening up and letting our emotions out because we fear we'll be judged and outed from the tribe. And that's what we won't have a sense of belonging. We fear that. And because if there's no sense of belonging, we fear that we'll be outed from the tribe, then that's death. If you think about it really at the core level. So, and that was back in the day, in the tribal days, that was like that. If you were biting your own, that was death. So coming back to men need men, men can heal. Men have this ability to heal each other, not by this special superpower or anything, just by being able to go, I see you in all of who you are, and I accept you. And I'm here to support you. Because then that shows that you're in the tribe, you're together, you've got brotherhood. And when you've got brotherhood, that's why you look at in the army, they've got the most strongest bonds with each other, is because they've built that together. And so that is how I believe we can move through and start to improve the mental health of men, and to start to build stronger healing communities and make this change in the world that we need. And that's, again, what inspired me to create this men's community and men's circles and beyond that.
So there's 3 major chapters here that I think are working together that I'm hearing here, Evan. So the first one, the difference between men and women. Women do generally regulate emotion. Men suppress or numb emotion. Women have had rituals for healthy expression of emotion. Men have not traditionally had those. And then the element of identity of what it means to be a man is holding men back from potentially sharing that in a female environment, so therefore men need men. I think you're really onto something here, that if we can do that in a safe space and we can share what's going on, then we can still have our persona and our identity over here completely intact, because we've got this ritual now where we can express our emotion in a healthy way and in a supported environment. Then I'm picking up a third channel there, that if we then do that together, we're also then role modeling that to other men, that it's okay for them as well.
Spot on. Yeah. Just as simple as that. Yeah.
The key question now is, there's going to be people listening to this going, damn, I wish I had something like this. How does someone start? Whether it's with you, Evan, with your circle, or in any other way, how does someone listening to this show going, this is exactly what I've been looking for? Where do they start?
Yeah. So simple Google search, men's community, men's online community, men's circles, just in your local area. So one that I've joined before, and probably one of the most famous ones in Australia, is the Mankind Project. So they're brilliant, the work that they do. So there's one there. That's the main one in Australia that I would recommend. And then each place, a state in Australia, and this is not just Australia, by the way. So I've lived in Bali before, and they've got a strong men's community there. Everywhere in the world, I guarantee you will find a men's only community specifically designed for healing and support. So it's as simple as a Google search online, and guarantee you'll find something. If you are listening and it's something that you're interested in, again, I think I'm jumping the gun here, but I do have the men's circle and my community that is online and available to anyone in the world, and happy to have a chat if that's something that a listener is interested in.
Perfect, Evan. And we'll circle back to that at the very end to give people the links and where people can find you. So that probably is a good time. Evan, thank you so much for this conversation today. I feel absolutely richer from this, and I know that the audience will as well. I'll take us now to our rapid round. These are the same 4 questions we ask all of our guests. So what's the one thing you know now, Evan Spargo, that you wish you knew when you were 20?
Conflict is healthy. So back when I was 20, I didn't want to ruffle any feathers. I didn't want to say what was on my mind. I was a compulsive liar because I didn't want to ruin the image of being the nice guy and not having friends. And I thought that conflict meant fighting. And so I said no. I said yes to things that I just did not want to do and should not have done. And then I said no to things that I should have done. And so it only took me until the last few years really to be really comfortable with conflict. And that's really changed my life, because back when I was 20, I was just saying yes to everything and then not telling anyone how I really felt, and lied. And it got me into a lot of trouble and into some really unhealthy places. And so that'd be the number one.
That's really interesting, Evan. And without conflict, we can't resolve things. And it doesn't mean war or fisticuffs. It just means you bring a disagreement or a discussion to the surface in a healthy way and talk it through. If you don't talk it through, it's never going to be resolved. Yeah, really good. What's your favorite book?
Favorite book would be The Way of the Superior Man. This is the first men's book I ever read, and I've read it about 5 times now, and it's something that I would continually go back. It helped me understand what it means to be a masculine man, and how to and the dynamic between the masculine and the feminine. And honestly, this really helped me to develop a strong relationship in my love life now with my partner, because of knowing what I understood from this book and how to show up as a man, and understanding the energy dynamics between the two and the role that we play and how we complement each other. It was truly eye-opening, and I give that book to almost every man that I work with.
Yeah, brilliant. All right, thanks, Evan. What's your favorite quote?
My favorite quote I've got here, it's by Carl Jung, who developed shadow work and one of the most famous psychologists ever in history. And the quote is, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." So absolutely love that one. Yeah.
Yeah, very much. That hit home directly, I've got to say. And finally, so we hinted to this before, but if people want to work specifically with you, Evan, either one-on-one coaching or in your community, how do they find you?
Yeah, so just evanspargo.com. It's got all the details for one-on-one coaching and also the Ascension community. So you can just apply. There's applications for each on the website. It's very simple. On LinkedIn, you can find me, Evan Spargo, in the search bar. There aren't too many others, which is good. And then on Instagram, at Evan Spargo. And just a little bit of detail. So if you are looking for a men's community, and it's not just the place where we sit around and talk about our feelings, it's actually, I pour all my teachings about men's work, about shadow work, somatic work around the body. We talk about relationships, everything, and I get guest speakers in there as well. So it's not just a place to divulge ourselves and what we're doing. We're actually training men as well. So training, we're learning, we're developing ourselves. We create accountability for each other. So we have accountability check-ins every week, and we set intentions every quarter. And at the end of every quarter, this is probably one of my favorites as well, as we challenge and champion each other. So we all give each other, every person gets a challenge, so something that they can improve on, a blind spot, and a champion, which is something that they should be really proud of. So they're encouraging, and this practice was confronting a lot for a lot of guys at the start, but now this is our fuel to become better. We help each other become better. So if that is something that you're interested in, because I know that there's a high percentage of lonely men out there at the moment. So the studies have shown that loneliness is a real thing at the moment. So if you are feeling that and you want to surround yourself with some heart-led men and build a community, then yeah, the Ascension community, just find them on my website, and happy to have a chat about it.
Yeah, brilliant, Evan. And I encourage everyone to look into it and go and attend some of these sessions and see where it takes you. I think it's amazing the work that you're doing, Evan. I want to say thank you. Thank you for your time and your wisdom. It's been wonderful to reconnect with you personally, but also to hear your thoughts again today has been really enriching for myself and, like I said, for the audience as well. I also want to say thank you for all the men that you're helping. What you're doing is critically important. It needs to be done. I'm so glad that you found this as your purpose in life. And for all of the men that you help, thank you, thank you, thank you, Evan.
Thanks, Mick, and really appreciate you having me on board, and continue all the great work that you're doing too. It's very inspiring, and it's always good to see. So thank you.
Wow, what an incredible conversation with Evan Spargo. He challenged us to think deeply about the stories we tell ourselves, how we show up in the world, and the importance of leading with both heart and intention. If there's one thing to take away from today's discussion, it's this. Leadership is not about power or control. It's about service, self-awareness, and connection. Evan's journey reminds us all that we can rewrite our narrative and lead in a way that uplifts those around us. Thank you so much for tuning in. In the next episode, it's going to be a solo cast where I share my personal reflections on everything I heard from Evan today. If you're getting great value from our content, we would love it if you would leave us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast service. You can also subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you our video podcasts, weekly curated videos, and our live stream show, all designed to help you become the leader that you wish you always had. Thank you for listening to The Leadership Project at mickspears.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Say Spears. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.